Hey, how's it going, everybody? Sean here from Zoobox, and today we got a special one today. Today we're going to be talking about 1993's Super Mario Brothers. This ain't no game. It's a live-action thrill ride, everyone. You know, you've seen the film. We've all seen the movie, I'm sure. Who hasn't seen Super Mario Brothers at least once? At least you've seen parts of Super Mario Brothers if you haven't seen the whole thing. This is gonna be a fun one. We got a lot to talk about with Super Mario Brothers. This is one of the most interesting productions, I think, of a major motion picture of its time. There's a lot of interesting things, a lot of studio stuff, a lot of creative vision confusion, a lot of actors upset, lots and lots of wonderful, wonderful things to talk about. But before we get into that, let's look at the particulars, right? This was directed by Annabelle Jankel and Rocky Morton, and if you don't know who they are, they got famous from creating Max Headroom, and they directed the series Max Headroom. Before that, they were mostly music video directors. I think they had done some Rush music videos and things like that, worked for MTV. But then they created Max Headroom. That kind of became a cultural phenomenon for a little bit. People thought they were cool. They had a cool perspective. And Max Headroom is kind of like this semi-comedy, kind of satirical, became a talk show. It actually started out as kind of like a crime noir, and Max Headroom was like artificial intelligence, and then it became more overtly comedic as I think the series and the character developed and whatnot. But that's where they were coming from. They had this kind of dystopian, interesting Lawnmower Man-ish kind of perception of what they did. That's the kind of stuff they had created. So it kind of becomes interesting, like why were they hired to direct Super Mario Brothers? But anyways, the writers are so many. There's Parker Bennett and Terry Runt, but there are so many more. This is a movie that had like 50 different versions of the script. So many. They had been trying to get this thing made for about 5 or 6 years, I think, before they actually got it made in 1993. Because Nintendo became a big thing. That was a big phenomenon. It was the resurgence of video games and the home console after the kind of the big crash in the early 80s with the Atari system. And I'm sure people have heard about all the myths about the Atari video game landfills and whatnot. And so there was a big crash, but Nintendo brought it back in a big bad way. Obviously, every system came with Super Mario Brothers, and the rest is history, as they say. The film stars Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper, Samantha Mathis, Fisher Stevens, Richard Edson, Fiona Shaw, Mojo Nixon, and others. We'll just say others. Lance Henriksen shows up for a second. He's in this for a little bit. The plot synopsis here on a good old IMDb is two Brooklyn plumbers, Mario and Luigi, must travel to another dimension to rescue a princess from the evil dictator King Koopa and stop him from taking over the world. Now, I was not a big Nintendo kid. I didn't grow up with Nintendo. I kind of had no reverence for Super Mario Brothers. If you could have a reference for the concept and the story of Super Mario Brothers, I don't know if you really could. I suppose there was like cartoon shows, and maybe wasn't there like the Super Mario Brothers live action show at this point. But it was a well-known kids property. I knew of it. I had probably played it a few times here and there, but I didn't really care about it. I didn't really care about the universe or whatever. So when I saw Super Mario Brothers back in 1993 or 94 maybe, whenever it came out on VHS, I did not see this in the theater. I, like everyone else at the time, went to go see Jurassic Park, which came out around the same time, and completely ate Super Mario Brothers lunch. Because if you got two giant tentpole, big budget special effects kind of spectacle movies that came out, Super Mario Brothers maybe ain't looking so good next to Jurassic Park. So I think it was an obvious choice for most people. Another movie that came out that same summer that also got kind of completely lambasted by the critics, but also nobody went to go see it, was Last Action Hero. Yeah, that's another one that's kind of been critically reappraised in the ensuing years, and people have come around to kind of appreciate it. That is definitely one we will do on one of these videos someday. But today we're talking about Super Mario Brothers. So I kind of liked it when I was a kid. I thought it was just a cool, unique, kind of like science fiction movie. It's got like this really interesting dystopian, like Dino Hatton in just on itself, just superficially, it's a really kind of cool interesting looking place. It's got a cool way the world works. The idea that there's a parallel universe where dinosaurs evolved into their own version of like human beings. You know, human beings, we came from apes. They came from dinosaurs. There's almost like sort of this like this kind of almost like a racist vibe to it, like about how they feel about the people from the other dimension. Because the dinosaurs, apparently they are aware of the other dimension for some reason. I don't know why. They don't explain it, but they do. And I just thought it was cool. Like, and I obviously really loved Bob Hoskins at the time. You know, as a kid, Roger Rabbit. Roger Rabbit was a pretty big movie in my youth. So seeing Bob Hoskins kind of playing a very similar character almost, at least his voice, he does the same voice. And also, just on the face of it, Bob Hoskins as Super Mario, or as Mario, is great casting. He's a perfect actor for this. And he was perfect in this movie, this version of Super Mario Brothers. So apparently, the way they got all these good actors, you know, because there's Bob Hoskins, there's Dennis Hopper. The way they got those guys was that the script that they were first given was a much darker, mature, probably didn't go over the line. Maybe it would have been like a PG-13 movie of the time. Kind of just more interesting movie. And once everybody had signed on, and right as production was rolling up, because they'd already done all the pre-production, they'd already built all the sets, all like this cool kind of Blade Runner-ish, Blade Runner light, just kind of Mad Max dystopian type stuff, right? They all that stuff was in place, and the studio got kind of cold feet. They're like, no, we need to make this a family film. So right off the bat, there was a conflict between the creative decisions that were being made. So the two directors were kind of, who apparently were just not well equipped to handle a movie like this, which is interesting that they were given this movie. I don't understand why the studio in the first place was like, oh, let's get the people from Max Headroom to do our Super Mario Brothers movie. It's kind of crazy. It's just, it was like one of those decisions you're like, huh? Like, what did you think they were going to bring to the table? And the fact that they had gone through the pre-production process, made it all the way to casting, made it all the way to the set, and then the studio was like, no, we really got to pull back. So they were constantly forced to like rewrite things. Apparently the whole thing was a nightmare. Everybody from behind the scenes has nothing but like bad things to say about it. Bob Hoskins says it's the worst thing he ever worked on. It's the worst movie he's ever been on. Dennis Hopper kind of echoes the same kind of sentiment. Like, I guess his son asked him, he's like, Dad, why the hell were you King Koopa in Super Mario Brothers? And he's like, because you need shoes, son. And then his son said, I don't need shoes that bad, Dad. So everybody kind of had a bad time. It was just a wild production. It was supposed to be like a 5-week shoot, ends up being a 17-week shoot. Because there is a lot of special effects stuff. There's a lot of practical effects. There's a lot of early CGI. I mean, the movie runs the gamut of the kinds of things you would find in one of these kind of movies. This is like something that you would think like Stuart Gordon would have directed a movie in this kind of setting. Like if you ever see the movie Fortress with Christopher Lambert, it kind of looks like Fortress. It's just a weird juxtaposition between the characters from the video game and what you know about the video game, and then this world they created. They have nothing to do with each other. Like the Super Mario Brothers aspect of it is incredibly tacked on, and it could have been anything else. Honestly, I think it makes it kind of fun that it is the Super Mario Brothers, and like they do kind of get into the Super Mario Brothers iconography about an hour into the movie where they get the plumber suits, and the cool, like the way that they divine to like have the jump mechanic from the video game. They get these like jump boots. Like, it's kind of cool. It's a kind of neat, like grounded, realistic way of explaining parts of the video game and the dynamics of the video game. Because honestly, like, you shouldn't make a live action Super Mario Brothers movie. You shouldn't. There's no reason to. I don't know how that would work in any universe. But that was the thing at the time. You got to remember, the Flintstones movie came out around this time, which another movie where I have some nostalgia for. I got a soft spot for the old Flintstones movie. I think it's a much better representation of the Flintstones than Super Mario Brothers is. Honestly, it's actually a pretty good representation of the Flintstones. Whether you like that movie or not, it does feel like the Flintstones. But this just feels like its own thing. And I actually think it's pretty fucking cool. I'm not going to hold it to a standard that is almost like impossible to fulfill. Like, if you're doing a live action version of the fucking Super Mario Brothers, like, how are you supposed to achieve that? There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There was nothing to adapt. So they had to completely come up with something crazy and different. And as the story goes, like the original scripts, the first few, are much more kind of fantasy film. They're much more magic, or the Mushroom Kingdom, and the princess getting stolen and held in a castle, and it was not this. And then for somehow slowly over time, it kind of morphed into this, because I do think that they were just thinking like, well, how do you actually make this movie? How do you do it on a budget? Like, what is, like, on a fundamental level, what is Super Mario Brothers? And I think if you strip a lot of that stuff away, like a science fiction kind of setting or a context, kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense. I'm not saying it's a perfect movie. It's far from perfect. And obviously a lot of that has to do with the production issues that the movie faced, because it is tonally all over the place. It's a kind of a darker movie, but then really goofy at the same time. So it's always kind of struggling with that. It always feels at odds about the kind of movie you're watching. And that was definitely something, because it was the producers versus the directors. And the directors not being really communicating with the actors. Everybody was kind of left to their own devices. And you get kind of a hodgepodge. But as is, from hearing the stories of the Nightmare production, it's almost like a miracle that the movie is as coherent as it is. It doesn't really fall apart until the end of the movie. And the reason why it falls apart at the end is because it doesn't kind of get its big spectacle. It ends on a catwalk, which is a fun scene in and of itself. Dennis Hopper is great. Bob Hoskins is fucking great. And they're a lot of fun just watching. But apparently it was supposed to be like this big thing that happened in Manhattan, on the Manhattan Bridge. And Mario was supposed to kind of like jump up and climb the Manhattan Bridge and drop a bomb in King Koopa's mouth as he's morphed back into a dinosaur, and he jaws close over the bomb, blows up. The day is saved. So it was supposed to be kind of a bigger thing, and then because of running behind schedule, because of going way over budget, they had to kind of do what they did. And that's a bummer. That's a bummer. I would love to have seen the actual kind of like what they signed up to make. I would love to see that. But having said all that, like I said, I do think it's way more coherent than most people give it credit for. And it presents an interesting kind of unique universe with a unique parallel dimension story that's kind of fun, especially in the beginning. I think the first 45 minutes of this movie are so fun. And the chemistry between Leguizamo and Hoskins is there. Dennis Hopper, like I said, is fucking fantastic. He's like, that's the cool thing about people like Dennis Hopper. Like, he would do shit like this. He's there to have fun. He's like, here's a role I can chew the scenery. I can just be kind of a superficial badass. I could be a menacing villain. And he brings so much to his performance. I mean, there's this whole idea he's a evolution, like his evolutionary line is the Tyrannosaurus Rex. So he like even stands around with his arms like this, kind of shortening him up a little bit as he walks around. When you see him just kind of standing, and when he stalks around, he kind of like brought this T-Rex thing to it, which is like, you didn't have to do that, but when you notice it, you're like, hell yeah, that's awesome. Hell yeah. Don't phone it in. Don't phone it in. And even if he was phoning it in, which I don't know, it seems like everybody was mostly kind of very professional. Except for, I guess, Bob Hoskins apparently used to get drunk on set all the time. That's as the legend goes. I think I don't know if there was like an oral history of Super Mario Brothers that came out in like 2011. I can't remember which outlet released it. I don't remember if it's in there or if John Leguizamo spilled the beans on that. I'm not 100% sure who spilled the beans on that, but apparently Bob Hoskins used to get drunk all the time because he was having such a miserable time. They were stuck in North Carolina. And that's another cool thing, and it's a credit to the kind of the practical application of a lot of this stuff, is that all of the sets were built in kind of like old industrial buildings, Which is kind of a trick that was used a lot in a lot more budget titles of the time. A lot of science fiction movies like Cyborg or Nemesis. They would just kind of go out to, well, for those movies, they're kind of out in the Mexico and California deserts and just kind of filming on like water filtration places and stuff, like out in the middle of nowhere. But they dressed like these old warehouses and stuff, and it's cool. It gives it like a cool vibe. Like I said, it does have like a Blade Runner light vibe. I'm sure there's other movies that are probably better parallels. Like I said, the cinematography makes it kind of look like Fortress, like just the way it was lit and stuff, which is that Stuart Gordon science fiction movie. What else? What else about Super Mario Brothers? Well, I just kind of like it. When I watched it tonight, I put it on because my kid's like super into dinosaurs right now. I was like, let's watch a different kind of dinosaur movie. Let's watch something weird. Let's see how he responds to it. Probably a little bit too much talking. Probably not enough dinosaur stuff in it for him. He made it about, I would say, like 45 minutes in before he kind of checked out. Which is, that's apropos. That's just the way it goes when you're dealing with a 3-year-old. But someday he's going to love it because I'm going to make him love it. But yeah, it's just, I think people just kind of dog on it because of the name, Super Mario Brothers. I don't think it would have such a bad reputation. And over the years, it has had kind of a critical reassessment. And I think people have come to appreciate the kind of oddness of the movie over the years. And there's even a website, the SMBarchive.com. They've done a ton of work as like kind of archiving and holding a torch for this movie for the past, I don't know, like decade, maybe longer. Actually longer at this point. It's been like 12 years, but they even did they're the only people that have done a high definition 1080p release of the movie with special features and it's got like a retrospective making of doc that you cannot get in America. The only thing you can get is this DVD. This is the only way you can get this, which is, I think it's owned by Disney at this point. Disney owns this. Release it, you fucking cowards. Put it out on Disney Plus or whatever the hell it's called. Put it out on there, you cowards, you fucks. Give me a high definition version. I gotta watch it in fucking 185.1, which when you have a modern TV, it's like a box in the middle of your screen. No, I want to see this thing in its glory. I want to see everything in its glory, baby, because this is like the production values were there. It's like a cool looking world. I want to see it. I don't want to feel like I'm watching it through a fucking cheesecloth, Yeah, but you can't get it, the Blu-ray, it's not region appropriate. It doesn't have a region 1 release. So if you have an international Blu-ray player or DVD player, whatever, you can obviously import it. And it's really not that expensive to import. I think you can get it for like $23. But but if you're curious about this movie, you want to hear some like in-depth stuff. They have tons of interviews and oral histories and deleted scenes and some of the old scripts they actually have available. You can go look at them, which I did a long time ago. Worth checking out. It's definitely worth checking out. I will try to remember to put a link to it in the description if it still exists, which I believe it does. Yeah, and I think it's worth taking another gander at if you haven't seen it in a long time. Like I said, it's got issues. It's got those tonal problems. I think it has some pacing issues. And the third act kind of implodes on itself a little bit. They were not able to kind of make the movie they wanted. And that just brings me back to this whole thing about like, why the fuck did they hire Jankel and Morton to do this? I don't understand what they were expecting. It's just one of those weird things, man. Because they were seriously, people hated them so much for this. I'm not talking like audiences. I mean, just like studios. Apparently, the stories of their behavior on the set were so prolific, so legendary that they were like blacklisted for, like I said, like what, 16 years about? It's like 2009, I think I saw. It was like the first time they did something else. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty wild. Maybe deservedly so. I don't know, I've heard a story about them dumping coffee on an extra's head because they didn't like their costume. Like, just, I guess, like, egomaniac shit. I don't know. But like I said before, I would love to see the version of this that was the intended version. Like, you understand, like, from a studio's perspective, they're spending tons of money. They're like, Super Mario Brothers is a video game. Kids play video games. We got to make it so it's something kids will be able to go see or like or whatever. And that wasn't what they agreed to. And then they just kind of at the 11th hour went and changed their mind about what the movie was supposed to be. And that's never a good thing. That never works out. Excuse me. Or maybe it works out more than we know. And we just don't hear about it. Yeah, this isn't that group of movies that, like, people often dismiss that I kind of like. Like I mentioned earlier, Last Action Hero, another movie I kind of like. I wish I could see it in a better format. That's for sure. That's for sure, baby. But you can get these. You can get these DVDs are everywhere. You can still get them. They're $4. It's not like they're jacked up in price. I think I bought this for $5 at Target, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. Because, you know, I'm ashamed to say I went a long time without this movie being in my collection. I might have owned it on VHS at one point, though. I might have. I can't remember. But yeah, give it a chance, man. Give old Super Mario Brothers a chance. Do it for your kids. Do it for the children. They need to know. This is like a piece of history. Like, this is like an example of, like, if you don't do this, if you don't show people this, if you don't show your family this, okay? Basically what you're doing is tearing down statues. That's what you're doing. You're trying to erase history. That's not cool. How are we supposed to know? How are we supposed to have context for how far we've come relative to Super Mario Brother adaptations? Yeah, it's crazy. This is why Nintendo has never done anything with any of their properties. That's why there's never been a cartoon. That's why there's never been another movie. I mean, because they have tons of properties that you can make movies out of, right? Although, I think it's weird when you make a video game movie, when you adapt a video game into a movie, it's kind of pointless. It's kind of redundant because video games are so heavily inspired by movies, especially nowadays, that you're just kind of getting you're getting like just a hodgepodge of tons of things you've already seen on screen. It's interesting when it's in a video game, but it's not so interesting when it's a video game movie. I'm trying to, like, is there a good video game movie? Do they exist? Mortal Kombat? That's a fun one. Not Mortal Kombat Annihilation. That straight up sucks. That straight up is a bad movie. Not, I mean, I guess maybe enjoyably bad, but a bad movie nonetheless. Didn't something come out like that says, oh, it broke the video game movie curse? Oh, Sonic the Hedgehog came out. You know, I saw Sonic the Hedgehog. It was fine. It was whatever. It's one of these movies that takes an entire movie to set up what could be an actual Sonic the Hedgehog movie. But, hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Apparently they're making which was kind of news a year ago or so, they're making a CGI cartoon Super Mario Brothers movie. And I think the studio, Illumination Studios, maybe is doing it. People that did the Despicable Me movies. I'm not saying the creative people, but the animation studio. They're the ones behind it. And that's probably appropriate. I don't know how else you would even think to do something, because it's kind of, you know, it's going to be about loyalty and friendship and not taking people for granted. You know, that's what it's going to be about. This has, you know, in fairness to this movie, it actually has kind of some of that. It's about optimism. It's about your family. It's about loyalty. It's about having respect for yourselves. It's about not being embarrassed about who you are. And all that stuff is in there. It's all in there, and it's all readable. It all comes kind of full circle at the end. It's executed well in that respect. Got to give some props to Super Mario Brothers. Like, I got to get this poster, dude. I love this thing. I love this fucking poster. I love this cover. This is badass. It's a blast, everybody. It's a fucking blast. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for me today. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, head down to the info place. There's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter. Also, if you'd like to make a recommendation for one of these daily movie reviews or for a Zoobox Goes to the Movie in the future where we do deep dives on movies, throw it in the comments and I will put it on the list. All right, everybody. Good night. Good day. Farewell. This ain't no game.